We've got 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets, you guys. It is time for another episode of Regan's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with another premiere video of Regan's Newsround, where I cover 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets in the UK. The date and time of this recording is on Thursday, the 9th of January at about 9 AM UK time, just for reference here. These are the 7 stories we're going to be covering, and I will timestamp it for you guys after the video premieres. The first story we'll be covering will be from The Guardian of half of England's county councils are due to hold elections could ask for delay according to reports. The next one we will be looking at is MPs the vote against the new national inquiry into grooming gangs. We'll talk a bit about that as well. A Liberal Democrat was told to pay the Liberal Democrats, were told to pay £14,000 to an ex-candidate. We'll look into that one as well. An exclusive from the iNews saying that kitchen worktop stones must be banned to stop deaths after safety alerts. That's from the iNews. That's an exclusive from the iPaper. We also see from the Independent that Badenoch refuses to restore the whip to Warsi despite being cleared of her wrongdoing over Sunak's coconut tweet. We'll read into that as well. The other story we'll have is from the Financial Times of back to office disputes spread across the UK's public sector. So this is obviously about encouraging people getting back into the offices rather than working from home. And then finally, we'll have a piece from the Byline Times where 2025 is the year Extinction Rebellion demand that we should go zero carbon, but Britain has woefully failed. And that's a lot. That'll be the final piece. We'll also have 2 funny videos in between to break the ice as well. So let's start with this one then from The Guardian here. So, half of England's county councils due to hold elections could ask for delays according to reports. So at least 12 councils may request postponement of May's elections amid government devolution plans. So the government is obviously looking to change things up around devolution. It is possible that I want to make this very clear that some county councils elections and whatnot have changed. Boundaries and whatnot have been moved under the Conservatives before. It's nothing that is not new. The only thing is this, obviously, that this could be much, much higher than usual because of the plans and implementation that Labour are doing with a means to try and save strap cash sort of thing. So that's where this is coming from. This is where the crux of it is coming from, because it's Labour in government and not the Conservatives. This has been amplified as a means of trying to portray Labour as trying to withhold or delay or stop the elections. Even though those same people in my comment section who basically say that that Labour are trying to dismiss elections weren't saying anything about it when the Conservatives were in power. So just wanted to make that very factually clear. I don't believe for 1 second that Labour are trying to delay or stop any elections whatsoever. I know there's no evidence to support that. It's absolute nonsense to make that exaggeration. But I do think that some councils need to hold off their elections while they make these changes. Do I agree with some of the changes? No. I think, yes, sometimes it's better to keep separated than to merge units together. But I don't. But for some areas and some constituencies, I don't know and nowhere near enough about them. And it really should be that those in those areas should know a lot better than myself, and even those perhaps in the comments, unless you live in that area. I do have concerns about these devolution plans because I do see it as a means to try and save money as well, which is what they do. Which is what it's doing. I do feel like there's a cost-effective way of doing this. It's about cost effects and saving money, rather than actually, holding on to what the seats and elections that we already have. So I do. I know some people will call this a form of austerity. I wouldn't go that far. But I can understand why some people will call it like that as well. But I don't buy for 1 second that this is an idea by Labour to try and restrict, trying to delay elections and whatnot. I do think that there is some necessity to this. So let's just read a little bit of it. So half of the county councils are due to have elections in England this spring could ask to have them postponed. Local elections are due to take place in 21 counties, councils, areas in England in May. But at least 12 of them are poised to ask ministers for delay, the BBC and the Times have reported. Angela Rayner, the local government secretary, has given councils until Friday to request that their elections be delayed so that they can explore the potential for restructuring their local authorities as part of the devolution plan. Nigel Farage's Reform UK party has reacted furiously to the potential delay. Several of the councils have asked to postpone the ballots, including Essex and Thurrock. These are key reform target areas. Yasser Elusive, Reform's chair, posted on X that Labour and the Tories are so terrified of Reform's rise that they are colluding to rob the British people of their democratic rights. The potential delays have also drawn criticism from some local leaders. This is absolutely nonsense that they are terrified, because if that was true, why have they got so little council seats in comparison to all the other parties? They don't, like, the Greens have like over 800 council seats. Reform haven't even got 50. Like I think it's like 10 or something, 10 or 12. They've got council seats. They don't even have that many. So I don't think that's the case. Ministers announced a major redesign of local government in December, where smaller district councils and larger county councils could be merged to create unilateral authorities to handle all services. The reorganisation is seen as an important way to devolve powers away from Westminster to local areas where the plans were set out. And the government said some of the local elections in May, especially in county councils, could be delayed by a year or more, and this would not affect mayoral elections. Several councils are holding urgent meetings this week to decide whether to press ahead with their elections in May, and the government has stressed that no decisions have been made. Angela Rayner had told a select committee hearing this week that it would be ludicrous for councils to hold elections if they were planning mergers. But some local councils have argued that these two things should not go hand in hand. Alistair Beadles, the Conservative leader of West Norfolk, said on Wednesday that given the support of devolution as formally expressed by all local authorities in Norfolk and Suffolk, any election delay is plainly unnecessary and worse could prove divisive. The elections in May will be Labour's first electoral test since its landslide victory in July's general election. In the 6 months since, the party's popularity has plummeted. The last time the seats were up for grabs were contested was a high point in Boris Johnson's premiership, which means the Conservatives are braced for heavy losses this spring. I think it's very clear to say that even though the Conservatives have gained some odd council seats since the general election. I know that sounds bizarre, but there are some people who are stupid enough to vote Conservative still after everything that they've done. So make no mistake that while it may seem on paper that the Conservatives may get a hammering, that might not be the case. There are some people actually who are dumb enough to vote Conservative despite everything that's happening. Now, are we going to see an increase in reform? I think that's the real question here. Are we going to see an increase in reform? I think it's very possible. I do think we can see reform gain some council seats. Can they have a very good local election? Well, do they have enough on the ground, and when it comes to volunteers? Do they have enough bodies to help support them when it comes to this, help them from that point, the groundwork? Because this company, and I do call them a company because that's what they are. If they are to break through, they're going to need to have grassroots, and at the moment they don't really have a lot of grassroots. So while many people may be saying vote for reform, do they have the grassroots to cut through? I think is a question. I can see Liberal Democrats, Greens perhaps potentially taking advantage of the situation as well. There is still obviously quite a bit of time between now and the local elections, so a lot can change in that time. There may be some things that, their global effects can also affect polling as well on how governments react to certain things. Obviously, Donald Trump is coming in, so there may be an effect from America that comes back to here of how Keir Starmer will respond to actions made by the US government, for example. So there's a lot of things that can happen between now and the local elections. Sorry, but I don't buy this premise that is being held back. I know some people think it is. And that's fine if you want to believe that, but I'm not buying that at all. So another story that we've talked quite a lot about is the grooming gangs. This one is from Sky News. So MPs vote against the new national inquiry into grooming gangs. The vote was largely symbolic, aimed at putting pressure on Labour after comments by Elon Musk brought grooming gangs back into the spotlight. Now, I will say it's good that it's in the spotlight in terms of this is a very serious thing, and it needs to be dealt with, and because the fact that we may or may not still have them in England is an absolute disgrace. It should not be happening at all. The fact that it was happening for a long time and nobody's been dealing with it, nobody's taken action against it. Because here's the thing: like the Conservatives didn't take action against it when they were in power. It's easy for people to point the finger at Labour when they've been in power for 6 months, but the Conservatives were in power for 14 years. Why is there not enough anger towards the Conservatives on this matter? This is the crux of the problem again. It's like, it's all well and good saying, well, Labour are in power now, they need to take action. And I know some people are in favour of a new national inquiry. I'm not in favour of it because I want to see justice. I want to see that grooming gangs are being targeted, they're being arrested, they're being charged, and that those who are responsible are facing the full wrath of the law. That's what I want. I don't want victims to be afraid to come forward and give vital evidence against these people. I think that's really, really important, and holding another inquiry could potentially put those victims off. I know some people will say, well, some people want that inquiry, and there may be some things that may have been missed in the last couple of inquiries and that have been from other inquiries, and that's entirely possible, and I completely respect those opinions. But there are some victims who want action, justice now, and they're still not getting it, and that's a big problem. So, a Tory bid to launch a new national inquiry into grooming gang scandal has been voted down by MPs amid criticism of political game playing. MPs rejected the amendment to the Children's Wellbeing Bill by 364 to 111, a majority of 253. However, even if the Commons had supported the measure, it wouldn't have actually forced the government to open the desired inquiry due to parliamentary procedures. Instead, it would have killed the government's legislation, the aim of which is to reform things like the children's care system and raise educational standards in schools. Tonight's vote was largely symbolic, aimed at putting pressure on Labour following days of headlines after comments by Elon Musk, which brought grooming gangs back into the spotlight. The world's richest man here, Sir Keir Starmer, and Safeguard Minister Jess Phillips, after she rejected a new national inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Oldham, saying that this should be done at a local level instead. The Tories had previously said that an Oldham inquiry should be done locally, and in 2015 commissioned a 7-year national inquiry into child sex abuse, led by Professor Alex Jay, which looked at the grooming gangs. See, this is the thing. Tories didn't deal with it, and Labour didn't deal with what's happening in Oldham. So there is maybe something here. Like like the thing is, if we had a 7-year national inquiry, like that's the thing. However, they didn't implement any of the recommendations when in office, and Sir Keir vowed to do so instead of launching a fresh investigation into the subject. The division list shows no Labour MPs voted in favour of the Conservative amendment. Those who backed the proposal included all of Reform's 5 MPs and 101 Tory MPs, though some senior figures, including former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and former Home Secretaries James Cleverly and Suella Braverman, were recorded as not voting. Liberal Democrats abstained, but said they will instead lay their own amendments calling for recommendations to be enacted in full when the bill reaches the committee's aid, in order to avoid blocking the passage of important child safeguarding measures. This from John Craig, the chief political correspondent for Sky News. Playing politics is what opposition parties do, but not at all Tories got the memo. So Keir Starmer was disgusting, and Labour MPs were guilty of all cowardice, according to Chris Phillips, after the Tories crushing 364 to 111 defeat on the new probe in what he called the rape gang scandal. But did all Conservative MPs share the Shadow Home Secretary's zeal in demanding the inquiry? Not all, it would appear. There were also some big names absentees who didn't vote for the Tory amendment. One notable abstainer was Simon Horde, the North Dorset MP, and one Nathan Stewart, who has consistently cautioned against his party's more vulgar populism and knee-jerk reactions to controversial issues. In the Commons on Monday, during exchanges on an Yvette Cooper statement on child sexual exploitation and abuse, Mr Horde told MPs, "I think the Home Secretary is right to say that the public wants to see action now." And signaling that he was unhappy with his party's demands for a new inquiry, Mr. Horde added, frankly, I remain unconvinced that a new public inquiry will throw any new light on information on this issue. But the cerebral Mr. Horde wasn't the only noticeable name among the 16 Conservatives who didn't vote. Somewhat surprisingly, including 2 former Conservative Home Secretaries, Suella Braverman and James Cleverly. Ms. Braverman later clarified that due to very important constituency engagement, she was paired for the vote. An arrangement between 2 MPs of opposition parties allows them both to be abstained. No surprise, perhaps, that Rishi Sunak was missing, but so too were shadow cabinet ministers members, Stuart Andrews, Richard Fuller, and Andrew Bowen, and 2 former Attorney Generals, Sir Geoffrey Cox and Sir Jeremy Wright. The 111 MPs back in the Tory amendment includes 101 Conservatives, the 5 Reform MPs, 2 Democratic Unionists, Jim Sharon and Sammy Wilson, and 3 other ultralist MPs, Jim Allister, Robert Swan, and Alex Eston. So Ed Davies, 72 Lib Dems MPs abstained, prompting the Tory Shadow Equalities Minister Mimi Davis to declare, every time the Liberal Democrats have the opportunity to stop Labour, they simply prefer to sit on their hands. But Labour hit back at the Tories, highlighting the measures in the children's well-being and school bills to protect vulnerable children. Clearly playing politics trumps safeguarding children on the Conservatives' list of priorities, said a spokesperson. To be fair, playing politics is what opposition parties do. And though Labour also accused Kemi Badenoch of pulling of political opportunism, which is also what opposition parties do, but perhaps not all Conservative MPs got the memo. Speaking to Sophie Ridge on the Politics Hub before the vote, Education Minister Stephen Morgan condemned political game playing. What we've seen from the Conservatives is a wrecking amendment which would basically allow the bill not to go any further, he said. This is a political game and not what victims want. Victims want to see meaningful change. As well as the J Review, a total number of local inquiries were also carried out, including in Telford and Rotherham. Speaking earlier at Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer accused the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, of jumping the bandwagon after Mr Musk's intervention of spreading lies and misinformation. Referring to her time in government as Children's and Equalities Minister, the Prime Minister said, I can't recall her once raising the issue in the House, once calling for a national inquiry. And I can say this, guys, wholeheartedly as well, that someone actually decided to go and look this up on the Parliament website and looked up to see whether Kemi Badenoch had brought it up at all. And there was no transcripts, no conversations whatsoever. No point that did the opposition leader ever bring it up when she was whenever at all ever. He also is having spoken to victims of grooming gangs this morning. That we clearly want action now, not a delay of further inquiry. And Ms Badenoch argued that the public will start to worry about a cover-up if the Prime Minister resists calls for a national inquiry, and said no one has yet joined up the dots on grooming. Girls as young as 11 were groomed and raped across a number of towns in England, including Oldham, Rochdale, Rotherham and Telford, over a decade ago in a national scandal that was exposed in 2013. So we're talking about 12 years ago. It's been 12 years, and yet there is still no justice. There's no accountability. Why has there been no accountability over this? Why has nobody gone to prison for this? Why has nobody been charged for this? I'm not talking about just the perpetrators here. Who has been denying? Who has been stopping this happening? You know, is this been Conservatives who haven't been doing it? Is there politicians that need to pay for it? Is there judges involved in this that have not allowed it to go through? Is it prosecutors? Is it MPs? Is it police officers? What has stopped this in its tracks from 13 years ago? What has stopped this in its tracks? That's the question that I have, because someone, somewhere has delayed this, and it could be multiple people. And I don't care what political party you are. There is a problem if you do not want this solved. We're talking about gangs destroying people's lives, and it's absolutely disgusting what they do, absolutely vulgar, and it needs to be called out, and this needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. I know some people will say we need an inquiry. No, what we need, in my opinion, is action, not words. And I generally hope that there is action on this, and not just perpetrators who are arrested and brought justice, but some sort of look. I was going to say some kind of inquiry into why it's being delayed, but I don't think that would be worth the cost of the taxpayer money. but there needs to be some kind of accountability here as to why we don't have the answers that that people rightly deserve. So this is an interesting topic. We're moving away from Sky News to the BBC, you guys. So Lib Dems were told to pay £14,000 to an ex-candidate. So Liberal Democrats have been ordered to pay £14,000 to a former parliamentary candidate who said she was driven out of the party and barred from staying as an MP over her gender-critical views. Now, this is this story sounds very similar to what happened with, there was a Green member who had something similar on LGBT views. There was something similar about it's not the same thing, but there are similarities from this, and that resulted in the end of, obviously, I think the Greens ended up paying out in the end to the former Green member in doing so as well. So let's read a bit more into this, guys. So Nathaniel Berg was removed as a prosperous parliamentary candidate for Wakefield after she wore a top bearing the slogan "Women, Adult, Human, Female" to a party meeting. Mr. Birds from Stockport said she was treated like a wicked witch and felt targeted in the campaign of discrimination, Central London County Court heard on Wednesday. She had asked for a award of £90,000 for injuries to feelings for breach of her membership contract and rights under the Equality Act. Miss Bird sued for discrimination, and representatives of the Lib Dem membership had previously concealed the claim. So, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this top? Like, I don't understand what the problem is. Why do the Lib Dems have a problem with it? I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't understand what the issue is. Miss Bird had been critical of the party's politics online, but Judge Jane Evan Gordon said there was no evidence that Mrs. Bird's views had ever crossed the line and become transphobic or abusive. The court heard Miss Bird holds the belief that sex and gender are separate. Her views are known as gender critical. She alleges that as a result she had suffered discrimination by the Liberal Democrats, which has caused great hurt to her feelings. The judge said the level of compensation reflected on the fact the discrimination was not a one-off or an isolated incident, but is likely to have a significant impact on Mrs. Bird. She noted Mrs. Bird was not prevented from returning to work, and so the sum made allowance for the unfair process involved in her removal, but not for her lack of progress in her political career. The judge said any higher compensation could put her in line with someone who had suffered scarring or permanent loss of vision. It seems to me that the loss of feeling cannot be compared to the loss of an eye. And the judge added political parties are entitled to choose candidates who support party politics and remove those who disagree with the politics. They cannot be expected to choose who publicly disagree and undermine party policy. Ms. Bird says she was called a illiberal TERF, suspended from the Lib Dems and barred from standing as an MP for a decade. TERF stands for Trans-Exclusive Irrational Feminist. Ms. Bird wore the t-shirt after bearing the words "Women, Adult, Human, Female" in the days after she was nominated as the Lib Dem candidate for Wakefield in December 2018. Soon afterwards, she received a letter suspending her membership and notifying that there would be a formal disciplinary hearing against her for breaching the party's code of conduct. Like, if she's made or expressed views in any way, shape, or form, then it'd be different. But unless there's been actual views of her saying that she has an issue with trans views, issues with trans views, unless she has publicly stated them, tweeted them, or any way, shape, or form, then I can understand why the Lib Dems reacted. But I haven't seen that. There, let's be very clear here. In this, it says here that she was called a illiberal TERF, but she hasn't. Where has she expressed it? I'm sorry, I'm struggling to see from the Lib Dems' point of view why what they did was acceptable. I know some people in the Premier chat might hit back. So, Ms. Bird did not see the suspension letter as she was on her way to a meeting of the Wakefield District Liberal Democrats Club when she was turned away and told to leave. She described this as extremely humiliating, embarrassing, and upsetting experience. An offer of £40,000 was made to settle the case, but she never properly engaged with. By Mrs. Bird, the court heard. She will receive 90% of her costs, which have yet to be set. Speaking after the ruling, Lib Dem spokesperson said the case relates to the events which took place in 2019 under a different complaint system that has since been changed. A part of me feels sorry for her because, like, here's the thing, right? Like, I do not see a problem with this shirt. Like, I don't see how this is, like, this is not targeting anyone specifically. I don't see a discrimination here. Like, she's just saying she's a woman, adult female, adult human female. What's I don't see what the issue is here. I really don't see the issue. Like, I don't see what the issue is. I really, really don't. Like, if she came out with anti-trans views, then it'd be a different thing. I mean, if there's evidence out there that supports that, then, you know, my position would be very, very different. If she has publicly stated them or privately stated them, then again, my position would be different. But it just feels like to me that the Liberal Democrats got this completely wrong. Like, I don't know what's the problem here. I don't see the issue. I don't see an issue with that shirt. Some people will say differently, but me personally, I think it was absolutely stupid from the Liberal Democrats. I think it's just absolutely stupid. Moving on, the next story I've got for you guys is an exclusive from iNews. So, a kitchen worktop stone must be banned to stop deaths after safety alerts. So, MPs call for tougher regulation on engineering stones linked to cyanosis, saying new HSE guidance doesn't go far enough. So, we have talked a little bit about this in the previous videos, one or two previous videos, or even on a Regan's Newsround maybe, about some certain materials used for kitchen worktop stones, which have, which could lead to people dying from dying with the putting in cyanosis. Those who actually install and fit it into kitchens, it's a very dangerous thing because it can really deadly to the really dangerous to lung disease, and obviously any kind of material that can lead them to have, you know, long-term effects on their life. It should be a priority that it should be banned. If it means that it puts people at risk, you know, the health and safety and well-being of not just the material itself, but the well-being of the workers who put it in, their well-being should be looked after. And the fact that it could it's leading to people dying as a result of it, this is very problematic indeed. And this, like, and sadly, this is, I hate to use this analogy, but it's just like the whole cladding situation around schools. The schools and hospitals, you know, using a cheaper and easier, a cheaper material just because to save money, and that's the same thing with these kitchen worktop stones. The companies that use them, that supply them and whatnot, they're using these materials because it's cheaper, but what they don't realise is that it's actually dangerous. Very, 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 very poor decisions by these companies. The companies who recommend them and put them through, they're the ones who need to pay for some compensation along this. So MPs and campaigners are demanding tougher measures to protect young tradespeople after the UK's health and safety watchdog issued a major safety alert about popular kitchen worktop material. It's the first official guidance for engineering stone, which has been linked to a new aggressive form of deadly lung disease, cyanosis. The Health and Safety Executive, HSE, has warned employers that they must prevent workers from breathing in toxic saliva dust. Trendy man-made stone slabs, primarily quartz, have soared in popularity in recent years among homeowners and new kitchen builds and refurbishments. But the HSE update has sparked fresh calls for a ban on the material following the deaths of young workers who inhaled the toxic dust in Britain's workshops. The All-Party Parliamentary Group for Respiratory Health, the APPG, welcomed the new guidance on installing kitchen worktops as the first step in the right direction. But a spokesperson for the group of the cross-party MPs told the iPaper it's not a big step. It is not a big step if it has taken a year to get here. A lot more could have been done on this. The group said the guidance wouldn't tackle rogue traders who continue to expose workers to toxic dust when cutting engineering stone, primarily quartz, by flouting safety regulations. Markin Maz was diagnosed with syncosis last year and he died in April. This person lost his life because of it. It stressed that the deadly nature of the dust created during the cutting of a man-made stone, along with the rapid onset of related diseases, and called for firmer action to be taken, including the HSE undertaking more inspections of work sites. In its new guidance, HSE said worktops should be prefabricated, so further proceedings on site to avoid while untrained installers should not be used. Water suppression of dust, specialised equipment, and extract dust and respiratory protective equipment were other measures outlined. Green Party peer Nadine Bellett, who sits on the APPG, said the update was implicit if berated reconciliation from HSE that there is a serious problem in this area, but only a ban on engineered stone would fully protect workers. She said, campaigners have been calling for action for years, and since I started asking the former government about the issue last February, the pattern has only been of denial and deflection. Accounts of the condition in which workers have been affected, which failed to meet basic safety standards of existing regulation, indicate guidance of this sort is not going to be enough to keep workers safe. Australia has banned engineering stone worktops, and the UK should follow that lead. Sunak, I know I'm not pronouncing the word right, and I do apologise. Sunacosis checks for exposed workers should also be standard, she said, adding that HSE calls for health surveillance in a risk industry appeared inadequate. Kevin Boutman, the chief executive of the British Occupied Hygiene Society, the BOHS, said that the guidance was welcome but long awaited, adding, especially considering the acceleration of psychosis, the speed of publishing guidance is critical. He said, I am delighted by the guidance, but they should have acted sooner. We have known about this globally since 2016. We, BOHS, have been campaigning for explicit guidance since 2021. Should have happened a good few years ago. We've been screaming at the rafters for the guidance to be changed. Another thing that the Conservatives were told about and ignored. He stressed how the existing regulatory framework around working with engineering stone remains unchanged, even if the guidance had been altered. What is new for the HSS to procure such easy-to-read guidance that this is a welcome departure. But he continued, the people who are most at risk are those working for business that do not pay much heed to HSE anyway. And I'll read that bit in the end in a moment. The HOBS and HSE and trade body of the Worktop Fabricators Federation have also prepared a separate sign colour dust awareness tool for stone masons due to be published this week. Mike Callicutt, Deputy Director of Health and Work at the Health Watchdog, said on Tuesday, it's important that businesses act now to ensure they comply with the law and protect their workers from serious lung diseases. HSE inspectors have often found poor management of control measures, including water suppression, dust extraction, equipment maintenance and cleaning, and RPE provision. Employers should ensure suitable control measures are properly used and maintained. You know what? I feel like they should just wear gas masks, just not breathe any of it in at all. That's why I think maybe it's just me saying that. So this is a bit more into this. So Syncolis, the deadly lung disease linked to kitchen revamps. Quartz kitchen countertops have soared in popularity across the world in recent years, but their rise has been blamed for a new wave of Syncolis among workers, with Australia becoming the first country to ban engineered stone last year after hundreds of stonemasons contracted the incurable lung disease. At least 18 cases of Syncolis has been diagnosed in UK engineering stone workers since 2023. The youngest, aged 24, inhaled respiratory chrysalicia RSS dust. The average age of first 8 men diagnosed was 34, with most of them migrants working in small workshops with poor safety standards in place. In November, a father of 3, Max Barguez, 48, died just weeks after speaking to the I paper from his London hospital bed when he was receiving end-of-life care for his deadly lung disease. His death followed that of Wasim Al-Jarudi, 28, who died in hospital in May while waiting for a lung transplant in what he believed to be the first confirmed death from Syncolis in a UK engineered stone worker. A coroner issued a rare prevention of future death report following Mr. Al-Jarudi's death, calling for a timetable for action from the HSE and government departments. This month, the Trade Union Congress called for a UK ban on engineered stone, a demand that came after doctors treated affected patients and said a ban must be considered. When it comes to people's well-beings and their lives, it should be banned. And let's say, the only way I can see the material, people being able to work and use this material, is if they are literally wearing a gas mask, so that they do not breathe and inhale it in. That's the only thing. But even then, even in the environment of where they do with the work, it's still dangerous. It's still dangerous. Yeah, it should be banned. And the thing is that because of the material and that is quite appealing to people as well. But we're talking about, you know, just because it may seem like, to some people it may be like, oh, it's only 1 or 2 lives. No. This is people have lost their lives as a direct result of these kitchen worktop stones. Just ban it. People can we can live without it. We can live without these kitchen worktop stones. Just ban it. Ban the material. Ban it, and we can people can come up with much more cleaner, better, safer designs. It's really just do it that way. And I hope most of you guys will agree with me too. So guys, we're going to take a little break here on Regan's Newsround. We're about 35 minutes in of this recording. So I hope you guys enjoyed this funny video from the Exploding Heads. It's one of the newest ones that have dropped from them here in the new year in 2025. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It is called The UK is Under Attack. So I hope you guys find a laugh out of this one. Oh, wait a second. Just fixing the screen for you guys. Okay, here we go.
It seems that the UK is under attack from foreign interests.
Yes, it's brilliant, isn't it? As long as we're not in charge when it happens. And thankfully, we have the media to help us with these attacks on the government. Although we don't really see these as attacks since we agree with them entirely.
These, up until about last week, would be considered treasonous opinions.
Foreign interference is wrong if it's the wrong type of foreign. But these are Americans. When have Americans ever made poor decisions? Certainly not recently. And look, it's not really interference. He's just asking questions of countries he's interested in, like the UK, Germany.
Russia?
Not Russia, no. Not China either, no. But he's not afraid to go after the big powers. Powers like Denmark and Panama and Canada. He won't let them off the hook.
He sounds like a bully.
And what's the best way to deal with a bully? By agreeing with them and joining them. And look, if that means I hate my country, then until such a position becomes personally damaging, I'm absolutely fine with it.
Yeah, just another suck up really to Elon Musk there. Another suck up. Oh dear, guys. Oh dear. Guys, before I go to the next subject, if you haven't already, please hit that like button, be greatly appreciated. And share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. But one of the best ways you can support me and the work that I do here is becoming a YouTube member. YouTube memberships have recently gone down. So if you want to financially support me, if you want me to continue to do the work that I do here, you can support me. The best way by doing so is by being a YouTube member, whether that is 99p or 199 membership. Either one, it may not sound like a lot of money, but it really does make a difference to the work I do. In becoming a YouTube member, you get access to custom emojis, you get access to members' community posts, as well as whenever you respond to my videos, you'll get a response from me from being a YouTube member. And if you decide to become a 199 member, you get early access to additional content as part of that package as well. So you get something back for supporting me, guys. So thank you to anyone who has been a YouTube member. It is greatly appreciated. Other ways you can financially support me: if you're watching via premium video, you can leave a super chat down below, or you can buy me a coffee through the links tree in the description as well, or you can join the Patreon as well. If you join the Patreon, I get a bigger percentage of the cut, but you also, in doing so, joining the Patreon, you get early access to exclusive content only on Patreon if you decide to do that as well. So you get something. So whenever you are financially supporting me in whatever way, form, you always get something back from me. So thank you to anyone and everyone who has financially supported me. Is greatly appreciated. If you are struggling financially yourself to support me, but you still want to support and help out the channel, hitting that like button, leaving comments down below on my videos, watching them a bit longer than before, sharing them across social media, those are the best ways you can support me if you are struggling financially yourself. So thank you to anyone who has listened, greatly appreciated. Let us move on to the next subject. This is from The Independent. Kemi Badenoch refuses to restore the whip to Warsi, despite being clearing of her wrongdoing over Sunak's coconut tweet. So this is exclusive from The Independent. So the Tory leader refuses to reinstate UK's first Muslim cabinet member less than 24 hours after backing Robert Jenrick for rallying against alien cultures from medieval attitudes. Yeah, that tweet was a bit too much. For those who don't remember, she tweeted, obviously, I believe this was back over about when it was during the leadership race, and yeah, she made quite a bit of a fool of herself over it. But let me read into it for those just to remind people about the story. So Kemi Badenoch has refused to restore to whip to Saida Warsi despite her having been cleared of wrongdoing over a tweet calling Rishi Sunak a coconut. The former party chair now appear resigned at the Tory whip in the Lords in September when it emerged she was being investigated over the tweet. The Independent has now learned that the disciplinary panel cleared Baroness Warsi of being divisive and bringing the party into disrepute. But despite this, the Tory chief whip in the Lords, Susan Williams, has written to Lady Warsi, who is the UK's first Muslim cabinet member, saying that she was not welcome back. Lady Warsi has been targeted for warning of rising levels of Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. It comes amid the row over calls for an inquiry into grooming gangs, which has seen the Tories accused of political opportunism. Yeah, this is clearly, for her, this is clearly very depressing. On Tuesday, Miss Badenoch stood by her shadow cabinet secretary Robert Jenrick in his rally against Muslims and alien culture importing medieval attitudes in relation to the grooming gang scandal. His comments led outrage and there were calls for him to be sacked. But in a letter from Baroness Williams, seen by the Independent, Lady Warsi was told, while your membership of the Conservative Party is unaffected, restoring the party whip is a different matter. It is a privilege, not a right, following careful consideration. I cannot be confident that you have any intention of stopping your public derogation of our party and its successive leaders. This behaviour is not acceptable and I will not allow it from Conservative peers. It is understood that the Tory leadership objects to comments Lady Warsi had made previously about the party being Islamophobic and sliding into far-right extremism. So because of her political views and because of her political views and whatnot, they basically want her to get out of the party because they don't see her falling in line, is what they're basically implying. However, Lady Warsi has insisted that she has not asked to have the whip restored and accused the Tories of game playing. In a statement, Lord Warsi told the Independent that the party was attempting to demonise her for challenging its rising levels of extremism, racism and Islamophobia. The move appears to be an attempt to shore up the party on the right, in light of concerns over voters and Remainers alike, to deflecting Nigel Farage's Reform UK. Recent high-profile right-wing defections have included 3 former MPs, a major donor, and the founder of the Conservative Home website. So, I would say she's more of a maybe she comes across to me more of a bit more of centre right than extreme right, a far right, if you want to call it that. She has more of her feet on the ground more than anything, but clearly they've used since the tweet she made about Sunak, as you know, they've been using that as a means to try and push her out. I mean, this is kind of similar to if you think of what Labour did with the purge of the left in their party, because they purged a lot of lefties, a lot of Corbynites from their party. This is the same thing in the Conservatives, but you don't hear a lot about it. But she's someone who's been around the Conservatives for quite a long time. But clearly, the party that she was once a part of is not there. It's not the same party as it was. If you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, I think the Conservatives are a lot different to what they are now. And, they're a lot different to what they are now. Over the past 10 years or so, they're a much, much different party than what they are now. They certainly are not the same Conservatives. And she's not a part of that cohort. I think that's fair to say. She's just not part of that cohort, even though she's trying her best to kind of get. She wants the whip restored. She also wants to play her part, but they don't want her. I think they don't want her views at all at this point. I would not be surprised if she ended up in the Labour Party. I don't know if she would make that switch, but I would not be surprised at all. I don't see her being a part of Reform, but I can see her switching to Labour or Lib Dems possibly. So moving on to the next story, guys, I've got for you is from the Financial Times. The headline is this one is back to office disputes spread across the UK public sector. Staff at Land Registry to take industrial action after being ordered back to their desks 3 days a week. So this has been one of the biggest. This is a very this has been a real topic of discussion, a real headache for businesses. I think this is more of a like, people need to understand that the office buildings and whatnot, there's a cost to running office buildings, and there are two sides to this. So there is the one side where people can do their work at home while sitting behind the computer, like literally what I'm doing now, and there are those who are in the office where they can be watched over much more closely, working with colleagues and whatnot, while still sitting behind the computer desk. It's different. That's not as much as it used to. You know, the working from home aspect can benefit some people because you're at home, you're in the comfort of your own home. You can work a bit more comfortable, you're a bit more relaxed. You are still obviously being kept an eye on by work, by what you're doing. But while also at the same time, you're in your home environment. Whereas at work, obviously, you're under pressure. The boss is there. You know, your colleagues are there. But there's also the positivity of the teamwork aspect sort of thing, because your team are kind of around you. You're at your workplace and whatnot. But there's also the travel costs as well. This is one of the other things as well. One of the things that workers want to do is try and save money. And if they can do that by not having to travel to work, which costs them money, then they would rather do that. But in doing so, this obviously means less people in the office as well. So there have been trying to do some compromises, and some are trying to argue reasons for and against some of them. I think there does need to be a flexibility, because there are certain situations where people can and can't do them. I think there needs to be discretion with businesses when it comes to looking after their workers. Oh, just not the computer there, sorry. There needs to be some discretion when it comes to the workers here. Do I think it's right for people to take industrial action over this? For going back to their desk 3 days a week, is it really necessary? I can't say. It depends. It's different for everyone, every individual. So disputes over office attendance are spreading across the UK's public sector, with staff at land registries set to take indefinite industrial action from this month after being ordered back to their desks. So the Public and Commercial Service Union said on Wednesday that 4,000 of its members working at 14 of the agency's offices in England and Wales will refuse to cover for colleagues or take on extra duties from January 21st onwards, after voting in favour of strike action in December. The union is disputing a new requirement for staff to attend the office 3 days a week, which became the rule across the civil service last year. It is also concerned about a new system for tracking individuals' performances, and said staff have been given more duties without extra pay. This is a bigger problem here, is that people are asking to work more for the same, work more for less. This is a big problem. People need to stop expecting workers to do more than they are already doing. When people are already going the extra mile and they're being asked to go even further, this is a big problem for me. I have a big issue with people asking them to do more without extra pay. I hate that. The 3-day requirement is less stringent than that faced by many private sector white-collar workers, as big employers clamp down on home working. Yeah, in the private sector, it's down to the companies themselves. WPP, the advertising group, this week became the latest big employer to tighten its office attendance rules, following similar moves from PwC, Santander, Asda and Amazon. The Centre for Cities think tank last year found that government workers in London were spending less time than the office than private sector peers, coming in for 2.2 days a week on average, compared to 2.4 days a week for finance workers and 2.6 days across the private sector. But unions representing public sector workers said that expanding access to hybrid and other forms of flexible working rather than limiting it will be crucial against a backdrop of tight pay restraint. Paul Newark, the General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, which speaks for the UK unions movement, told the FT in a recent interview that flexible work should be key to addressing a recruitment and retention crisis in the NHS, schools and across the wider public sector. Of course, teachers could do a preparation for lessons outside the school environment. If that allows them to do their balance of work and life a little bit more efficiently, then that would be a good thing, he said. And I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all the way of delivering public service. I agree with that. The PCS is already leading industrial action over office attendance rules at the Office of National Statistics, where staff have been taking action short of a strike since May. PCS members working in the Met Police Service began industrial action as a result of similar disputes this week. The union is also campaigning for a 4-day week for its members at the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs and the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. The Land Registry said that PCSs would have minimal impact on its service and that it would respond as needed to maintain essential service support in the property market. However, the agency is still struggling to clear the backlogs that build up during the post-pandemic housing boom, and that has been both recruiting extra caseworkers and seeking to step up automation. Frank Hefcourt, PCS General Secretary, and the Land Registry Management had imposed changes to working conditions without the prior agreement and needed to find a solution to regain some of the goodwill required to make progress. When it comes to civil servants, there is an argument for and against it. Workers need to have more choice. I do think that's important that workers have more choice. Sorry, 1 second. Apologies, I get fickle sometimes. Workers do need to have more choice. I do think that really matters. But as long as the work is not affected, as long as the work is getting done, that's the most important thing. Is the work is getting done. That should be the main crux. Like, if a person is more productive at home rather than in the office, why change that? If they're more productive in the office than they're at home, then obviously you want them more in the office. It's trying to find a balance, but unions are fighting a battle here to trying to keep and protect workers. But obviously, in the private sector, it's down to the hands of companies, unfortunately. But in the public sector, they are trying to fight for that. I'm kind of on the fence because a part of me is like, I understand why more people want to work at home, but I also see the benefits of working back in the office as well. So I'm of two minds on it. I understand why some people have an issue with people going back to the office. I totally accept that. What I don't accept is what we've been doing when it comes to the climate. We're not doing nowhere near enough on it. This last piece is from Byline Times, you guys. So 2025 is the year Extinction Rebellion demanded that we should go zero carbon, but Britain has woefully failed. The government is absolutely not going to save us. 2025 needs to be the year we start to save ourselves. This is an argument piece from Rupert Reed, which we'll come to in a moment. But I will just say, Extinction Rebellion and many other climate activist groups, now, while some of their protests have no doubt, and I know some people will argue is that some of them, the actions that they have taken have been too much or been too strong. But they're, we have to be very, very clear here. We are not talking anywhere near enough about the climate. We are not talking nowhere near enough about it in the UK. We are trying to talk about the cost of living crisis. The right are always consistently banging on about immigration. But what we're not talking about is something that could potentially kill the entire planet and our species, and that is climate. We need to do more. Now, I know some people are probably thinking, oh, what's the point? We shouldn't do it anymore because, well, we know that Trump is going to reverse everything and make emissions worse. And yeah, you're right. America are going to make emissions worse. We know that. That doesn't mean that the rest of the world should stop trying to make things more greener, to stop trying to reduce our carbon emissions. We should try to stop our emissions. And we're not doing nowhere near enough of it. And the whole carbon capture nonsense thing that the government announced last year, that's not going to solve the emission crisis. It's only just hiding the problem. More needs to be done. And we're not doing anywhere near the amount that needs to be done. There are other countries that are doing their part. But it's about what we do. It's not about what other countries do. It's about what we're doing. And we are not doing anywhere near enough the levels we should do. Like, we are a freaking island. We get a lot of wind. We get a lot of sun. Why are we not using that as our power? Why do we need to rely on digging oil out the ground or relying on gas? We shouldn't need to rely on these anymore. We should be fading them out, is what we're doing. But I just feel like that oil and gas and capitalist businesses have so much control that it's becoming harder and harder to fight this battle. Happy New Year. 2025 is already a failure in at least one key respect because it is the year Extinction Rebellion, targeted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by. I helped launch XR in 2018. The target of Britain going zero carbon by 2025 was set to demonstrate seriousness, thinking this is an emergency, and also simply because if Britain was to decarbonise fast enough to fairly reflect the share of world emissions it is entitled to, especially once one that takes into account the huge historic emissions then that 2025 came out as the year by which we should decarbonise in full. Obviously, Britain and the world have absolutely, categorically, and woefully failed to do this. As a result, tragically, we're now moving far deeper into a climate more than emergency ever in an XR foreseed as possible, as a recent insane flooding episodes showed. Yeah, flooding in Spain there, that claimed over 200 lives. That was back in November. Very clearly, Britain going at zero carbon this year is not going to happen. What do XR themselves say about this? When XR launched in 2018, 2025 was a realistic date, 7 years in the future, with plenty of time to do what needed. We kept this target to show how much time has been lost. So XR are noticeably retaining the now impossible target of going to net zero by 2025 to make a point. It's a fair point. When we launched XR in a blaze of glory and excitement and, more importantly, hope, I believed that it would make a difference. And we really did at first. XR's greatest achievement was successfully dragging the eco agenda into the day of light, and that's something we are hugely proud of. We successfully forced a national conversation on decarbonisation. But in terms of XR's theory of change, serious blockages emerged. The high visibility of the radical flank polarised the emerging National Convention on Climate. This has become very harmful over time. Moreover, XR's plans relied on the government's responding to two demands and ultimately getting their act together. And whether Conservative and now Labour, that was never going to happen, not at least remotely sufficiently. So all of us, need to reflect on what we do now. What lessons should readers draw from the stark failures of a radical climate movement to achieve essential demand? One key lesson that we urgently need is a mainstream climate more than movement. A wave of wider mainstream action. If we are to have a future, climate nature action needs to occur way beyond activism. It needs mainstreaming, and the space needs depluralizing. Another key lesson is that it's time for climate activists and through leaders to let go of fantasies of achieving decarbonisation. Indirectly, instead, we need to pivot towards hard climate adaptation. We are living now with the consequences of failure, and we will do so ever more for a very long time to come. We need to move to protect ourselves from and through this, as well as demanding protections via the state too. Climate readiness needs to stop pretending that full decarbonisation is achievable within current human political timetables, and switch to calling for enacting deep strategic and transformative adaptation to our terrifying territorial incognita. For the foreseeable future, governments are absolutely not going to save us. That's why I think 2025 needs to be the year we start save ourselves and each other. We need to mark 2025 the year in which we have gone zero carbon by a handbrake turn towards transformative and strategic adaptations to cope with our growing vulnerability with the extraordinary rising tide of climate impacts. I moved on from XR in 2020 to start to make the case for a more encompassing, mainstreamable and depolarizing distributed way of climate action. The first manifesto for this was published in Byline Times in 2021. To encapsulate this vision along with others, I then formed the Climate Majority Project. Our big push in 2025 was going to be our Safer campaign. The word is also known as an acronym. It stands for Strategic Adaptation for Emergency Resistance. What does that mean or amount to, you might ask? In 2024, we saw perhaps for the first time that we are all on the climate front line. Impacts are no longer just in the far-flung countries. They are here on our doorstep, sadly for some people quite literally. Crazy worldwide autumn epidemic of flooding culminating in Valencia has exploded like a bomb in the minds of many. It's clear that decarbonisation agenda is no longer enough. We also need to adapt to what is here, and the worst thing is coming, because let's not forget this is just the start. Safer aims to build support for a resilience measure in order to protect local communities and to transform an understanding of climate breakdown by centralising the need of a serious global protective response to our shared but differentiated growing vulnerabilities to impact. No doubt, in 2025 we'll be hearing and seeing a lot more climate breakdown, but let's use that to inspire us to work together. It's not game over yet. It never is. We can still make a huge difference, even if we begin at ground level. So resolution 1 for New Year, get your neighbours round for a cup of tea or a wee drama and start the conversation. and that is from Rupert Reed. Dr. Rupert Reed co-directs the Climate Majority Project. His latest book, Transformative Adaptation, Another Word is Still Just Possible, is out now. That was a while ago. It just felt like, they're like just pose for the picture, and whatnot. That's all it was. That's all these massive COP events are. They're just picturesque. That's all they are. Just to paint this picture of like, oh, look at what we're doing. Like we're making this big hoo-ha, big difference, and it's just like they're not really making a big difference. They're not really making a big difference. Now, yes, other countries need to do their own part, but we are nowhere near doing enough. We are nowhere near doing enough. We need to call it out. Our friend One Angry Pagan on his channel has talked on numerous times about the rise in sea levels as a direct result of the climate as well. And this could happen much sooner than expected. And I'm sure we'll have him on the channel again and talk about it again in the future. It's not just obviously the needs to change our way of life, of how we eat, of how we take in energy. That there is an adaptation coming. The adaptation is coming. And we can continue to stick our heads in the sand and saying nothing's going to happen, everything's going to be staying and nice and rosy as it is. It won't. Things are going to change. And the problem is that people don't like change, especially older people. Older people don't like change. Well, the reality is things need to change. People need to get with the times. And until people start, unfortunately, people need to suffer more before action needs to be taken, which is the wrong approach. But as long as there are oil and gas companies and capitalist dogs who have control of politicians, this is going to continue to be a problem as well. So guys, we come to the end of Regan's News Round, but first, before we head out, I've got one more funny video for you guys who are watching on the Premiere Watch. I hope you guys enjoyed this funny video from Broken News. Apparently, it's been leaked that Apple launches an exciting new product range. Let's hear what Broken News has to say on these exciting products.
Welcome to Broken News. Well, the tech world has been in a state of fevered anticipation ahead of the release of Apple's new range of products today. Rumours have been rife around what huge surprises the tech giant has in store for us, and our reporter has the details.
An iPhone that's 1mm bigger, an iPad in a very slightly different colour than the other ones, and a MacBook you can't plug anything into are among the fresh and exciting new range of Apple products announced today. Prices are changing too, with the latest iPhone now available for only the cost of a 2015 Skoda Octavia liftback 1.6 TDI with 16-inch alloy wheels and hydraulic brake assist. And the new iPhone retains well-loved features like an easily smashable screen and a 34-minute battery life. Consumers will also be given the option to put all their data in iCloud or face a firing squad. At the product launch event, a man who isn't Steve Jobs anymore but has stolen his wardrobe, looks a bit like Ellen DeGeneres and talks like a Texas pig farmer, announced a unique new feature, a slightly different charger for every single individual Apple device. How wonderful. Back to you.
Thank you. Well, in a statement just released, Apple's chief technical officer said, "We haven't thought too much about these products. We don't need to anymore because nerds will buy them anyway at the full retail price, and some of them will even queue through the night like proper twats." What a lovely story. Well, that's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
I'm sorry, like I know there are some nerds out there who are like techie fratic and all that kind of stuff, and that's cool if you love your tech stuff, right? But like if you that's a lot of money to burn. If you got money to burn, okay, but like really, do you really need to update to the next Apple phone immediately? Like, oh. Some people are weird, some people are weird. So guys, what did you make of some of the stories that we covered here on Regan's News Round? We covered 7 different stories, very interesting ones. Half of England county councils were due to hold election could ask for delays. We looked at MPs voting against the new national inquiry into grooming gangs. The Liberal Democrats that were told to pay £14,000 for an ex-candidate. The kitchen worktop stones that have caused the deaths of people's lives, sadly. Kemi Badenoch refusing to restore the whip to Warsi, despite being cleared of her wrongdoing as well. That was an exclusive from The Independent. The UK, from the Financial Times, that back-to-office dispute spread across the UK's public sector. And then we looked at a piece from Climate from Rupert Read, who was part of Extinction Rebellion. I'm talking about climate change and that. So what did you guys think about all those stories? Let me know your thoughts and more down in the comments section below. The gang behind me would like to say thank you. If you have watched all the way through, the gang here would like to say thank you. And just as I do that, Ollie turns off the orb there. So like I said, you get custom emojis if you are a member of all these people. All of them that are here. So you get emojis of all of them, which is pretty cool. But just before I go, if you haven't already, just have one last thing to say. Please hit that like button, be greatly appreciated, and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.